Hi, this is Krista and Mabel at The Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this easy oyster shell crochet scarf. What is so great about this scarf? You can use it in warm weather like this, just for a little something to distract the eye from any lumps or bumps you might not want to have hanging out. Or you can use it in the winter to keep actually just a little bit warm around your neck. So it's both a fashion piece or something warm to wear, and you can use any yarn at all. It's super easy 3-row repeat. All it is double crochets, single crochets, and chains. And it has a kind of a waffly oyster shell texture to the edge. Kind of makes it a little bit ruffly and a little bit super cool. To make the easy oyster shell crochet scarf, I'm going to be using this yarn from Ice Yarns. It is called Savor 100. I'm just using it, I love the color, and one skein of this yarn makes one scarf. So it's just kind of super easy. When you're done your yarn, your scarf is the right length. It is 100% acrylic, 100 grams, 175 meters, and it is a 4-weight acrylic. So it's a great yarn to work with. I'll be using a 7mm crochet hook with this yarn, just to make a kind of a drapey garment. If you don't have a 7mm, just use the 6mm you have in your set or in your kit. It'll be fine. I just prefer a slightly larger hook. You'll also need a darning needle for sewing in your ends, a stitch marker. So let's get started. So start by making a slip knot. You don't need to leave a very long tail. We're going to be crocheting over it. So shrink it down and put it on your hook and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. To count your chains, you do not count the knot, and you don't count what is actually on your hook. You just count these V's in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can also just count one side. If it's easier to just count these loops, you can just count one side also. So we're going to slip stitch to the very first chain we made to join. So right on top, here's the knot. Right on top of the knot, we're going to put our hook in right there and slip stitch to join. So we're going to make a ring. So put your hook in, grab your yarn and bring it back, and bring it through. So there's a slip stitch to join. Now hold your tail along that ring and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. This counts as our first double crochet. So wrap your yarn, and now we're going to make double crochets right into the center of that ring, going over our tail so we don't have to sew it in later. So put your hook right into the center, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2, wrap your yarn and take off 2. So there's our first double crochet that we made, plus our chain 3 counts as a double crochet in this pattern. So that counts as our first 2 double crochets. We need a total of 16, so we need to do 14 more. So wrap your yarn and 14 double crochets into the center of the ring, taking care to go over your tail. So pause the video and do your 14 double crochets, and I'll meet you back. So I've done my 15 double crochets. Counting my chain is 16. So I just count these posts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And there's my little tail. I'm just going to kind of poke it towards the back, and we can cut it off later when we have scissors handy. Now I'm going to slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 to join. So here is the first chain, right at the bottom, a tiny little guy. 1, 2, and here's 3. You can also look at your posts and just kind of line up your needle or your hook. And right at the top is that stitch that belongs to that post. So there's 1, 2, we want to be going into the next one over, right into that stitch. And this time you do want to get 2 loops of that stitch on the very top of your hook. So put your hook right into the top of the chain 3, 2 strands of that stitch on the top of your hook, and bring your yarn back, turn your hook and bring it through. So that is a slip stitch to join. And now we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this counts as our first double crochet plus a chain 1. And it counts as us working into this very first stitch here, this chain. So the next stitch we're going to be working into is over here. So if you just wiggle your fingers in between your posts, you can see your stitch or the next stitch we're going to be working into is over right here. That's our first one. So not on top of the chain, but on top of the next real double crochet. So wrap your yarn and into that next double crochet, 2 strands of that V on your hook. You want to make a double crochet and a chain 1. And into the next stitch, which is right here. So these are all stitches. We're going to make the same thing into each one of these stitches. Our next stitch, the same thing, double crochet with a chain 1. So there's our double crochet and a chain 1. So we're going to be doing this into every single stitch all the way around our ring until we reach where we started. So double crochet, chain 1. So we're making these kind of spaces, or like the spokes on a wheel. We're going to keep going around, so pause the video and I'll meet you when you get back to where we started. It looks like this when you have reached your way around. I have done my last double crochet and a chain 1. So now we're going to slip stitch to the 3rd chain to join. So count your first little V down here. 1, 2, and 3, because we want to leave a chain 1 in between all of our posts, all the spokes on the wheel. So we're going to be going into the 2nd chain over or the 3rd chain up, depending how you prefer to count it. So put your hook in, make sure you get 2 strands of that stitch onto your hook, and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 and single crochet into this very next space. So single crochet, chain 2, 1, 2. We're doing our mountains now, so this is our mountain round. And into the very same space, single crochet. So you can't really see it yet, but I'll do a few more and show you. So single crochet into the next space, chain 2, single crochet into the same space. Single crochet into the next space, chain 2, and single crochet into the same space. So we're going to leave 2 spaces open. This is our first hill into this space. We want to count 1 and 2, and into the 2nd space we want to put a stitch marker, just so we know we're going to do something different when we reach our stitch marker. So work your way all the way around, doing a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into every space until you get to your stitch marker. When we reach our stitch marker, we can just pop it out so it's not in our way. And into that space, we'll just make 1 single crochet, just to start in that area, and chain 6. So this is when we're going to be starting our 2nd oyster shell. So this is how we're just doing the first one. The rest are going to be a little bit different, a little bit faster. So now we can kind of start remembering what we're up to. So chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to slip stitch into the center of this very first mountain. So into the center of that chain 2 space, that is where we are going to slip stitch. So just put your hook straight in and bring your yarn back, turn your hook and bring it through. So that is your very first slip stitch. And chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This counts as our first double crochet, and turn your work. So we're going to be building our 2nd oyster shell straight into this space, this chain 6 space. So we want to do 11 double crochets into here. It'll be 12 if we count our chain 3. So 11 double crochets into that big space. Just pause the video and start it up again when you have your 11 double crochets, or 12 counting your chain 3. So there is my 12 double crochets counting my chain 3. So I just count my posts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we're going to slip stitch to the very first mountain here to join. So we're slip stitching right into this very first one to also pin it down on this side. So hook straight into the chain 2 spot, the very first one, and slip stitch to join. Now we're going to be doing the spokes. So chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first 3 count as your double crochet, and the last one is your chain 1. So turn your work, and we're going to be going into each of these stitches, going all the way back. So there's our first one. We're not going into where our chain came from, but the very next stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way along until we reach our chain. So each double crochet is going to get a double crochet and a chain 1. So wrap your yarn into the very next stitch. Make sure you have both strands of that V on your hook, and double crochet, chain 1. Wrap your yarn into the next stitch, double crochet, chain 1. So we're building these spokes all the way along our wheel. Double crochet, chain 1. Now keep going like that until you reach your chain. At the end of the row, I have done my 12 double crochets, counting my chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we also want to do a double crochet into the chain. So we're going to end up having 13 for this round. Don't worry about it. If you turn your chain towards yourself, just kind of roll it towards yourself, you'll see that very first V, and you just want to get 1 loop under your hook and 2 on top. I've already done my chain 1. You can tell you've done a chain 1 because there's only 1 strand of yarn underneath your hook. Wrap your yarn, twist that chain towards you so you can see where you're putting your hook. Just get 1 strand underneath your hook and 2 on top, and your last double crochet into the top of the chain 3. So there's our spokes for our wheel. And we're going to slip stitch into the second mountain over. So we're not going to slip stitch into this first mountain here. We're going to jump over. It looks like we're going really far, but don't worry about it. Right into that chain 2 space of the second mountain and slip stitch to join. Just like that. Chain 1. Turn your work. Now this is our mountain round. So into each of these spaces, each of the in between the spokes, all the way along, we're going to be doing our mountains. We also want to leave 2 spokes empty like we did before. So you can put your stitch marker into the third or into the second. I'll put it into the second just so I can work all the way without having to move it. So when I see my stitch marker, I know I have to stop. So we want to leave 2 empty spaces at the end of this row. So into our very first space, right here, we're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. Just like that. And into each space going along until we reach our stitch marker, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. So keep going along, pause the video and do 1 single crochet, chain 2, and 1 single crochet into each space going all the way along this row, making your little mountains, and I'll meet you when we get to our stitch marker. So now we're going to start our next oyster, and this is not connected. It's going to feel like it's loose and it's not right, but don't worry about it. It's exactly how we want it to be. So we're going to go ahead and start our next oyster shell, and we're going to be doing this way for the entire length of the scarf. Chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to be building our next shell starting right here. So we're going to slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 or into the third chain, because we want to have 1 chain for our chain 1 space. So just 1 chain in between and into the third chain up, or the second chain over. Push your hook in. You want 2 strands of that stitch on your hook, and slip stitch to join. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. So don't worry about it and feeling like loose, not connected. It's going to be fine. Into the chain 6 space, you're going to do your 11 double crochets. So that'll be 12 counting your chain 3. So 11 double crochets into this chain 6 space. And this is how all of your shells are going to start. So now this is when you can start remembering how to do it, or putting the pattern into your head a little bit. So 11 double crochets So there is my 12 double crochets. Don't worry if they're bunched up. It'll even out as you keep working on it. And just make sure you have 12 double crochets, counting your chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we're going to slip stitch into the very first mountain, the very first hill. So into the very first chain 2 space, we are going to slip stitch to start joining this oyster shell up. So push your hook into the chain 2 space and slip stitch to join. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that counts as your first double crochet and chain 1, and turn your work. Now into each of these dimples again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and also into the chain. So into these stitches going all the way back, not your first stitch, our chain counts as that first stitch. We're going to jump over into the second. That is going to be our first double crochet chain 1, and we're going to do that into every one of these stitches going all the way back along until we get to our chain. So wrap your yarn into the very next stitch, double crochet, and chain 1. So we're going to do this all the way along, 1 into each stitch, 1 double crochet, and chain 1. All the way along, we're building our spokes. So keep going all the way, and I'll meet you when you get to your chain. Into our chain, we're also going to be doing our double crochet. So roll that chain towards yourself so you can see that stitch, and right into that first chain, 1 double crochet. Just like that. And now we're going to join up. So we're going to skip a hill. We're going to skip this very first hill right here, and we're going to go into the second hill, the second chain 2 spot, and slip stitch to join. So not the first one, the second. Hook in and slip stitch to join. So now this side is joined up, chain 1, turn your work. And now we're going to be going back, doing our mountains all the way along, leaving 2 empty spaces at the very end. So into the second space, I'll just pop my stitch marker so I know to leave those empty. And into each space, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. So there's my single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the same spot to finish your little mountain, and do the same into each space, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and I'll meet you when we get to our stitch marker. When we've reached the stitch marker, we're going to start our next oyster shell, doing the exact same thing as we did for our third shell here. So chain 6 and join to the third chain up with a little slip stitch and a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now turn your work, and we'll be doing our shell straight into this chain 6 space, same as we did before. So we're just going to keep building our third shell over and over again. So I'll put a timestamp down below and also on the screen where you can just go back and keep doing the third shell over and over again until your yarn is finished. On your last shell, when you're just about ready to run out of yarn, instead of stopping with 2 empty spaces, we're just going to keep going and fill that up with hills or mountains. So just keep going right until the end with your single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet right into the very last space. And now we're going to slip stitch into our second hill. So our first hill is right here. Our second one is right here. So we're just going to go into that chain 2 space and slip stitch to join this up and finish our scarf. So bring your yarn back and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, and snug that down to secure. Now you just have to sew in the one tail on this side and find your tail that we worked over. If we have to cut it off, there's mine right there, my little stubby. We can cut off that one because we worked over it. And that's it. All finished. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to find us over on Facebook, the Secret Yarnery Crochet Community. Love to have you join our group. You can post your pictures over there. If you're not on social media, you can email me, secretyarnery@gmail.com. Love to see how yours turned out. So see you in the next video, and stay hooked.